Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, I'm joined by Suzy Walther, Chief People Officer at Carta. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. I'm feeling great this Friday morning.
Fantastic. You're just starting. I'm going to end soon. So you're my last call of the day. So I appreciate it as well. I'm really excited about the conversation. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Sure. So I am based in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey. I have two kids, 12 going on 25, a daughter and a son who's 15, and a black lab who's sitting to my left. And Chris, you asked about my journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, my career journey. I started with a company about 25 years ago named Bloomberg, based in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I spent 22 years of my career there before pivoting to Carta. Yeah. And I did not start in the HR space. I started in the business and really grew up in the business, taking on various roles with sell-side trading solutions in the beginning, moving to buy-side portfolio analytics and risk, ultimately ending up in the HR space, of course, but took a long time for me to get there. And then about almost 2 years ago, I pivoted to move into the role at Carta.
Amazing. And tell everyone a little bit more about the business who perhaps aren't aware of the organization.
Which business?
Carta.
Oh, Carta's business, yes.
Yeah.
So Carta's mission is a fabulous one. It's about creating more owners and democratizing equity and ownership. And so what we try to do is make it so easy for private companies to issue equity that private companies have no excuse not to. And so we're finding now, of course, that issuing equity is becoming table stakes. If you're a private company, the right thing to do is issue equity. So then the next challenge that we're dealing with is liquidity, because we're finding that private companies would like, in many cases, the opportunity to stay private longer. To avoid regulation, to give them more flexibility, but they have a lot of pressure when ownership is tied up in an IPO or an M&A deal. And so if we can offer methods for liquidity so that employees have access to monetize their wealth, then companies have the opportunity to stay private longer. So we're on a mission to help solve that for the private markets.
It's really exciting. It's such an exciting space that you're working as well. And I was blown away that when I recently kind of looked you guys up a bit more, how rapid the growth of the organization and the industry itself.
Yeah, it has been a fascinating journey in my year and a half plus year. I can't tell you. We've doubled the size of the company with respect to headcount. We've raised a lot of money. We have a really strong balance sheet, and everywhere we turn, we have great ideas of what to do with all of this private data that we've got. So we've got more than 23,000 private companies that where we've got their cap table data. And if you start to think about what you can do with that data, it's pretty compelling. Yeah. So it's a fascinating place to be.
Very exciting. Just tell us that moment though, when that opportunity happened for you to work in HR. Was it something you pursued, or was it a manager tapping you on the shoulder saying, I think you'll be great in HR? I'm always interested to hear how that moment happened.
Well, I was tapped, and I have to tell you, when they first approached me, it was the CEO at Bloomberg at the time. He told me to come and work with him on a problem that the company was facing, and it was around career development at the time. And I remember I was running a portfolio analytics and risk business that was taking off. It was a startup within the larger organization. I loved my job. I'd been doing it for 3 or 4 years at that point. And I looked at him and I said, I have no desire to do that. I don't want that job. Yeah. And he said, well, you have no choice. You're going to come and work with me. We've got to solve this problem. Turnover was on the rise. We had an issue with career development, like lots of companies do that are scaling quickly. And he wanted a business mind, somebody from the business to come and work with him to solve it. And it was a 2-year project. So I knew I could go back to the business after 2 years, but it was my first introduction to the HR world and really how we think strategically about talent. And the more time I spent thinking about the problems, the more interested I became in working on the problems. And I loved the 2 years that I spent doing that work. I did go back to the business for a couple of years and then eventually formally landed in HR.
What was your perspective of HR beforehand, before going in versus now, just out of interest?
It's a fantastic question, Chris. I didn't think much of HR. before. And I viewed it as the group that I went to when I had an employee who was doing something wrong or bad, the police, ER issues and whatnot. I never viewed it as a strategic talent function that could help me as a leader truly figure out how to match the skills and aspirations of my talent with the work in front of us to better achieve goals. I never viewed it that way. And that is exactly why I'm in this role today, because I feel that there's a massive opportunity to think really differently about the work that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked that question because I feel like most of us have that perspective. I certainly did in the organizations that I worked in. And the more I kind of learned, the more I obviously went into the down the rabbit hole. It was just fascinating just to see the role of HR and how it touches every element and aspect of the business as well. So yeah. What's really top of mind for you right now, especially given the last sort of 18 months that's been behind us?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a crazy world we're all in at the moment. And HR is front and center, which is fabulous. But we're also dealing with lots of problems and challenges we've never faced before. So these are hard times. I mean, I'm trying to scale a company. We're trying to add, just to the end of the year, we need to add 200 more people. And then next year, I got to figure out how we're going to add another 900 people in a market, in a world where everybody's making a move. So I've got to figure out how to grow Carta like this and keep attrition, low as I can. And attrition is tough in the world that we're living in. So that's top of mind. How do I grow a company and keep attrition low? And to do that, I'm laser focused on how we can think about supporting people, the whole human at Carta, not just, we've moved away in my brain from thinking about workers and employees at our company. And we're really focused on how we can support every individual as a whole person beyond the work they're doing at Carta, but it's their home life, their families, how they're handling childcare when there are no childcare centers out there anymore. So it's just shifting the way about how do we think about our people differently to make sure that they want to stay here at Carta. It's the best possible place for them to be.
What are some of the practical things you've been doing then to support that? You mentioned a few already.
Yeah, well, childcare, and Chris, I know you've got a young one at home, and you mentioned to me before that it was rough during the pandemic when you were home and your now 3-year-old is home. And we have a relatively young workforce at Carta. So we have lots of employees with young kids at home. And we saw the problem. We saw the childcare is closing. We saw their kids climbing on them in Zoom. And we started asking people what they need. And we actually came up with a solution that wasn't what they asked for, but I think it was the best solution, which is a childcare stipend where they can go out and secure childcare without feeling the burden of the cost, because the costs are through the roof.
Oh yeah, it's so expensive. More than your mortgage most of the time.
Yeah, and that was such pressure on people. So we introduced a really generous childcare stipend to help, but we're not done. I mean, we're still looking at other opportunities to help with childcare, backup childcare, for example, and other benefits that we can provide. But we've had massive focus on benefits, supporting the family beyond the individual.
Yeah, it's so important now. And I know during our conversation before we hit record as well, another big focus for you is around well-being, right? Taking care of the well-being of your population. How have you approached that? Because that's been something which I'm happy to hear, which has come to the forefront. We're having more conversations now around mental health and normalizing the conversation, and companies are now taking action.
Yeah, it is great to see and critically necessary. I think we as HR leaders have to be careful that we're not just checking a box and saying, well, we have an app, right? It's really, what are all of the different types of things that people need, and how can we create really flexible benefits to solve for what each individual needs and meet them really where they are. But so in our case, we're extending our mental health benefits to dependents. People, it's not just the stress on us, it's the stress on our families and our kids. And so to the extent that we can offer therapy sessions, for example, to our 15-year-olds like I have, that goes a really long way in supporting people beyond, what they might need themselves. And so that's been a focus of ours. We are constantly looking at all of the vendors out there for mental health to figure out how we can offer a wide variety of offerings that do meet everybody's needs. So in fact, I've been spending a ton of time personally on trying to figure this out with our head of total rewards, and it's a constant conversation. And I think it should be, to your point, it should be what we're focused on.
Yeah, talking about mental health, one of the things I came across was one of the posts that you did on LinkedIn. We were talking about the impact of HR itself, the burnout that's happening within our own HR functions. How have you been prioritizing your own mental health and well-being and your teams during this time?
It's a great question. I think the article that I had referred to said the burnout is real, and it is real in HR. And I think it's in part because we are front and center, and people have to work incredibly hard to solve the problems that we're all dealing with. And we've never done a lot of these things before. Should you make everybody in your company be vaccinated or not? And if the answer is yes, how you go about it and how you execute on that, and how with empathy, right? And it's really hard work. And so prioritizing mental health, we noticed that our team was not taking a lot of time off. In fact, almost no time off.
No one took any time, and it worked more, right? Let alone taking time off. Yeah,
they worked more hours. And you would think that without having to deal with a commute, somehow your day would be shorter. But we all know that that wasn't true. Everybody's days got dramatically longer, and it wasn't unique to HR. Of course, this is it seems like in every role we're seeing this. So we sat down to try to figure out how to solve that problem. Again, something we hadn't had to deal with before. And we decided that we would implement what we call unlimited minimum time off. And the minimum is the key, where we require you to take time off. And it's a minimum at the moment of 15 days a year, but then it's beyond that. You can take as much time as you want, but the minimum is the key, because if you don't force minimums, then people self-impose that a maximum, which is ridiculous. And so you say it's unlimited, but then nobody takes the time. So now we've got these 3 weeks that we force, and then I lead by example and I take the time off. And honestly, that shift in messaging has really created a culture of, well, I have to take the time off, so I'm going to go do it. I have no choice. And it has been wildly successful.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to say it, because that's something I struggle with as a leader. I'll say to my team, take time off. And there's even James, if you're listening, he's our biggest culprit. He just works so much. I'm like, you're not allowed to come in. You're taking time off. But then he is so right when he says, well, Chris, you don't take time off. So that's the part that I need to really, like you just said, learn to lead by example as well. But I'm like, oh, I need to be here. There's always a reason you can be. There's always more work. There's always something, but you have to step away. And I'm trying to be better at that as a leader, because I'm realizing I'm sending one message to my team and I'm doing something completely different as well. Yeah. That's something that leaders definitely, you obviously sound like you're doing a great job, but many leaders is a conflicting message there.
I know. I do work really hard at it. I stop my day. I'm on the East Coast. My company is based in California on the West Coast. So a huge portion of our company is 3 hours behind me. Mm-hmm. And yet I still stop my day at 6 unless there's an emergency. And I don't slack my team unless there's an emergency after 6. And so it is creating discipline, which I feel that as I've gotten older and worked longer, I figured out how to do much better. And I encourage everybody on my team to create the barriers. Otherwise, the company will take what you let them take of you.
Yeah.
So you have to create the barriers.
And it'll always take more.
Of course, as much as you're willing to give.
Exactly. Yeah. I've learned that the hard way. I'm sure we all have. Yeah. There's been so much uncertainty, so much chaos happening around us, and HR has obviously been at the center of that. Now more than ever, businesses are turning to HR to kind of lead the way. But a big challenge I'm hearing from many HR professionals is, where do you start? Where do you go? It's just so much going on, and a lot of these challenges, there's no playbooks for this. How did you kind of have that conversation with the team, decide where do we spend our time and energy, and where should we focus our attention?
Yeah, we had a challenge of starting a pandemic or living through a pandemic, and also trying to scale the company as quickly as we talked about earlier. And that meant building infrastructure. We had to implement a performance process during a pandemic, which is it's tough to implement a performance process generally. It's terrible generally. And then we had a pandemic to deal with, and we re-leveled the entire company, created compensation bands, created promo processes. So we kind of knew what we needed to do. And then we had the challenge of the pandemic on top. So we had general HR playbook, prepare for scale, that we knew. And then we layered on some of the questions around vaccinations, for example, and how to think about returning to offices and what that's going to mean for us. And we had to do it all at the same time. So that's where the burnout comes in for sure. It's a lot of work, but I think that the path in front of us was pretty clear. We knew that, you have to prepare the company for scale. And there are some things that we need to do to make sure that we're protecting our people in the world of the pandemic. And I think we knew what we needed to do. It was just figuring out how to get it all done with, of course, the constraint of limited resources.
Well, talking about the hiring then, we've heard over the last couple of months, the Great Resignation is like the buzzword at the moment, right? Is that something which is hindering you, or something that you're capitalizing on? Now we have this big pool of talent, and also the fact that you can hire globally now, where, in many cases, work is no longer a place you go to.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel really fortunate to be working for a mission-led company right now, because I feel that people are coming out of this pandemic thinking life is really short. It could be over next week for me, and I want to go do work that really matters. And so working for a mission-led company in this environment is fabulous. So hiring has really been great for us. We're hiring quickly, and people are excited to join the company, which is fantastic. And it's helped us keep attrition relatively low. So we actually we're slightly better than we were a year ago on the attrition front. Not that it's apples to apples, because the pandemic last year was very different, but we're in pretty good shape on the attrition front. Knock on wood. I could change at any moment, I know, but
yeah.
It's, so I'm excited that the pool of talent is out there. There's a big pool right now, and it's great to pull them in.
But you made a really good point, though, and because the data reflects it now, we're seeing a lot of research coming out about people who have had a lot of time to think during the pandemic, and many people, even including me and my team, have had that conversation. Is this really what I want to do? Is this aligned with my why, my value, my purpose? Because literally everyone was affected by this, and it kind of, there was a sort of this great awakening of people. I saw, I had an interview recently, and my guest said something along the lines of, the Great Resignation is caused by the Great Awakening. And I thought that was really true. People are no longer going to accept working for an organization that don't value them, the whole them, like we've discussed earlier in the conversation, and are going to provide that flexibility. Even close friends and family members of mine that have been in jobs for 20 years plus are all of a sudden now looking for new roles. So if you're an organization like yourselves, who have a very clear why, purpose-driven organization, you're going to attract those people. And it's a very clear distinction, strong employee brand.
Yes, it really, really helps. And then the challenge is, when they get here, how do we support them and create those feelings of, we care about their whole, themselves as a whole human. So yeah, it's a really interesting time for us.
Definitely. And I saw you and the team do a great job, by the way, just from my perspective of looking at your brand even on LinkedIn, of talking about your why, your values, and your mission. Even for me, who only looked a few hours of your brand, and I could feel it come through in everything that you do as well. So just congrats to you and the team. As someone who's never even come across the business until recently, I can feel it in everything, even in your posts as well. And something people struggle with.
That's so good to hear. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for companies over the next 12 months?
The biggest opportunities in what respect, Chris?
In terms of as a HR team, where do you think the biggest opportunity that HR has over the next 12 months to add value to the business and to their people?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, the point that you just made around the Great Awakening, that people are starting to think, am I in the right role? And I don't want people to think that they have to leave the organization to find that right role if they have realized that they're not perhaps doing the work that they truly love. And so I think we as HR leaders have to try to figure out, even with even more intention, and I know it's always something that's on our minds, and it's always hard to do. How do we make sure that we're aligning the skills and the aspirations of our talent with the opportunities that are in front of us? And what's fascinating now is that because turnover is on the rise at so many companies, there's this feeling like, oh my gosh, I've lost people. I'm going to go out and try to hire people. And yet we have this incredible team here that might be looking to make a move, right? So how do we spend time working on their career development in light of all of these openings that we have to make sure that we're moving our own talent internally? So we're spending a lot of time talking about how internal sourcing should work, right? We have open roles. We have an incredible pool of talent here. How do we figure out how to make sure they're sitting in the right seats where they're not only contributing well, but loving their role? And so I think that that's one of our greatest opportunities. And as I said, something that I know is really challenging.
Yeah, it's even in a small company like mine, you know, one of my sales executives recently were like, I'm really passionate about our product and I would love to work with you and the team on building the product. I was like, cool, great. And then, and obviously they have that, they understand our customer because they've been selling this for years. So they understand exactly what they're looking for in our product. And now they're flying and doing an amazing job. And similar, one of our other sales executives had a real passion for video editing and videography and now lead our content side of organization. And so many companies have these skills that exist and in their business, just don't know about it. And so they don't even bother spending the time to look inwards before they look externally. And there's so many benefits, obviously, from hiring internally. It's definitely more cost effective, but you also have the knowledge that already exists with that individual. They know the business as well. So
I agree.
Yeah. I'm going to jump into our quick fire round. So you wasn't expecting this. I do this on every episode. So I'm going to ask you some questions, but you have no longer than 30 seconds to answer each question.
Okay.
Are you ready?
On, Chris.
Are you ready?
Okay.
How would your family describe what you do for a living?
Fire people.
Listen, I wish I could say that wasn't a normal response. that is a pretty good one. What's the common misconception people may have about you?
That I have it all figured out.
Oh yeah, don't we all? Yeah. What's the 3 biggest investments you've made in yourself in your career?
Oh, that's 3, Chris, in 30 seconds.
What's the biggest investment? We'll do one then.
That I've made in my career. The biggest investment in myself has been executive coaching.
Yeah, fantastic. What's one song that you can listen to on repeat?
Okay, well, this is just top of mind because it's new and I've been listening to it a lot, but it's Like My Father by Jax.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good one. These are just fun ones, right? What are your hobbies outside of your role? You know, when you're not in HR, what do you do to relax, unwind, what for fun?
I bake bread, which I did before pre-pandemic. It's I like my house smelling like fresh baked bread. I want to. My kids
that's a
love
good
that.
smell.
So I do that. I have as I mentioned, the lab sitting next to me, so I spend a lot of time playing with her, and I am a really proud sports mom. So I attend a lot of sporting events for my son, who is also an ice hockey player. I know you are, Chris.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, he's got a game tonight, for example, and my daughter plays softball and basketball. So I love watching them.
Yeah, love it. I love it. What's one thing in your career you've had to learn the hard way? Let's put it that way.
I've learned lots of things the hard way. I would say that coming in from the business, I thought I understood a lot more about HR than I did. And I learned pretty quickly that I needed to lead with humility and listen and learn.
Mm-hmm. And then last question, what advice would you give to aspiring HR leaders that are on their journey to sit in your seat?
I think that operating experience is invaluable, and being able to actually sit in the business for a period of time so that when you're doing design thinking and you have extreme empathy for the business, that you've actually sat in that seat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you've lived and breathed it. Right. It's one thing knowing it, but living and breathing it is a whole nother thing as well. Well, look, thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot. I appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure. And have fun at the game tonight.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and then for everyone listening, I'd definitely say go and connect with you on LinkedIn, right? As well. I love the content you put out there. So for anyone listening, there's a link below. So make sure you go and connect. But apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks, Chris. Great to see you.
Thanks.